What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a special edition of the Fiendcast. I am the Ink Jedi. I'm joined with the Last Highlander, Uncle Mac, and a very, very special guest, Frank Gogol. Welcome to the show, Frank. Can you hear me? Oh, breaking up a teeny bit.
What's going on, guys? How's it going?
Hey,
There you go. Good, man. How's it going with you? We have some connection issues. Perfect. Oh,
we were
there's
talking
Evan.
for 10 minutes and then
We just had a nice long talk before this. What's up, Remy? What's up, Evan, in the chat? Thanks for joining us, checking this out. Let's see. Maybe Frank could. Let's see. Log out and log back in. Usually that helps too. Move, add. Good. Oh, a little frozen still. Oh, good. We good? This is typical comic book fiend club.
Did that make it worse?
There it is. No, you're good.
Can you hear me though?
yes.
Yep. Good to go.
All right.
Am I back?
Yeah, sometimes these things are just so. Huh?
No. It was me. I was trying to run too many monitors, so
Little lag, a little bit. Let me see. See if something I can fix on my end. Guess. I guess your comments good. What's going on, Mr. J? Yeah, so we have some tech. We were just talking for about 15 minutes. And we were good. Like legit, nice 15-minute chat.
I tell you, if COVID changes nothing else about our world, I think you're going to see a lot of people with really pushing for better internet connections provided for them. Like company. So many meetings I got to do for work. You just can't get a good reception.
Right. It's crazy. It's crazy how much being in quarantine is, how much internet has really helped with that. Let's see. Frank's still having some difficulties. We were just talking some deaded kids, and there it goes. Let's see. Sometimes you have to just log out and log back in. It's weird. Are you good? You might be better now. You hear us now?
Wait. I think we're good, right?
We're good. I can hear you pretty good. Cool.
All right. It's perfect.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
I think that's why connection's so bad. Too much traveling over. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Everyone is home and online. Everybody's watching Netflix and Hulu and all that fun stuff. I don't know. That's so weird. Like we legit just had a long ass conversation, and it was all Gucci. Let's see. Maybe it just has to log in, like completely leave the stream and just rejoin it. That usually helps fix it. Or we could just there it is. All right, let's see. Thanks for sticking with us, guys. This is unexpected. Usually StreamYard is a lot better than this too.
Yeah, that's what I'm watching it on. I'm not having any issues, so
yeah, you're pretty good. Let's see. Frank will probably log back in.
Well, while we're waiting, This just came out. This is one of Frank's books we're going to be talking about, No Heroine #1. I wrote a review about it this week, and if you haven't checked it out, I'm going to give it a big recommendation.
Yes.
We're going to chat about it, but it was a fantastic book. So
super interesting.
Am I back real this
Out and
time?
about.
we hope so.
Better, yeah. What's going on, Julio? Thanks for joining us, bro. Frank's still having some technical difficulties.
Yeah,
Where could they
hear
find
me?
your reviews? Yep. We can hear you. I think your camera's just giving you a little bit of problem, but
All right.
good. Little good, little better.
Yeah.
You could also with
It
this you
was
don't.
working so.
Yeah.
It was. Let me see something. If I do that, let's see.
As long as you guys can hear me and see me.
We can hear you. You're loud and clear. Loud and clear. There you go.
Loud and clear. All right. Let's
All right,
see how
sweet.
this goes.
All right, so let's get into it, man. Frank, tell us about No Heroine. As much as you can without spoiling for people who haven't read it yet or picked it up yet.
Sure. It's a book about this dude who's got a webcam that sucks. and it makes
I'm in.
that's my next book. It's a slice of life piece. No Heroine is it's kind of it's like what you would get if you mashed up like you watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer while listening to like a punk rock album. It's about a young woman named Kayla who's a recovering drug addict, and she's a real piece of garbage, but she's kind of trying to do the right thing, and that kind of throws her into the path of a gang of drug dealing vampires, and that experience sort of going to on a suicide mission against them sets her on another path that works its way out throughout the arc of the series.
Sweet.
Now I read a little bit of your bio in the back of your collection, Grief. So I know that this is not a world that you're coming at from an outside perspective. You unfortunately have had life experience with people who have substance abuse, and I was just wondering how much that kind of played a role in what you wrote in that comic.
Oh yeah, it played a huge role. The comic exists because of those experiences for sure, and it ended up playing a role that I didn't expect it to either. Growing up, both my parents struggled with addiction. My dad passed away when I was about a year and a half old from an overdose, and for like the first 15, 20 years of my life, my mom really struggled on and off with addiction, and there was a whole period of my life where she didn't have custody of me, and I didn't see her for a bunch of years, and it was tough. It was tough. So a lot of that really factored into it, because just watching my mom struggle with that stuff, but still like be a good mom, like put food on the table and raise me right. Like I ended up okay in spite of all that. So like a lot of that is because of her. Like it showed me that people who struggle with addiction aren't these monsters that like we sometimes see them as in movies and TV, but they're also not these like incredibly sympathetic people either. Like these people we should feel so bad for, because they are making mistakes and they are hurting people. And I wanted to kind of write a book that spoke to that kind of stuff. That gray space where somebody can have a problem and do terrible things, but also want to be better than they are. And I think that's pretty universal. Everyone wants to be better than they are. So I was writing this book from that life experience, but also because I grew up a huge fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I probably want to be a writer, or am a writer rather, because I watched Buffy way too young when I was 9 years old in 1997 when it came on. And another part of it has to do with Chris Mann, who did the art for the interiors. He was the cover artist on Dead End Kids. He's a buddy of mine from when I lived in New Jersey. We shared a comic shop, and Chris has a really great aesthetic in his art for horror. And sort of the way the book came about was we were both at a convention catching up after I moved to California, and we were just kind of shooting the shit. And he's like, "Yeah, if you want to do a book, like let's do a project. Let's do something." I was like, "Yeah, that would be awesome." Like, I don't really have anything right now. I was getting ready to write Dead End Kids when I got home from that convention. And I just sort of gave him like yeah, we'll talk. And then I got on the plane to come home to Cali. And by the time I got off the plane at SFO, I was like, I had most of the first script written. Like, it just kind of poured out of me, like between knowing Chris and his art style and loving Buffy and having those personal things from my life. Like, it just kind of came together very fast for me.
And so this is this your second collection, your second series with Source Point, or I don't know. I don't recall if you did Grief through Source Point or not.
Grief was originally a Kickstarter, and then a buddy of mine pitched it to Source Point for me. So that was technically my first book there. No Heroine and Dead End Kids were my first two pieces of original content with them. So yeah, they've carried on.
How's it been working? They're kind of a smaller indie publisher. Do you find that gives you a little more freedom than you would working at something bigger? Or,
Sure.
I'm not going to say what's your Marvel pitch, but
well, I mean, what can I talk about right now? So I have experience with Source Point and with Marvel. I'm not writing for Marvel. Like, that's not me spilling the beans on anything. But after Dead End Kids, Marvel asked me to submit, and more recently they asked me to submit again when No Heroine was taken off. And the difference between the two companies, it's night and day. Like, one's a juggernaut, multi-billion-dollar company, and the other is a really scrappy publisher with, I think, 9 full-time employees. Like, it's night and day. Source Point's been awesome to me. Like, they really kind of let me do whatever I want, however I want it, within, reason, which I think helps me make better books, helps me get the word out better. They as long as I'm not out there like trashing anyone's name or causing any trouble, like they kind of let me do my own thing, and I like that a lot. And I think it's been helpful. Like, I think Dead End Kids and No Heroine have been pretty successful, and at least so far. And a lot of that has to do with the style of, kind of letting creators do their own thing that Source Point has, for sure.
How taken aback were you by the success of Dead End Kids? I mean, I think every week I was keeping up with your post and sales and second printings.
Blew my fucking mind. I got a story that I like to tell about that. So the book was supposed to come out on July 24th of last year. I think it was the 24th. That might have been the date for No Heroine this year. It's all blurring together now. But it's supposed to come out at the end of July. And Diamond pushed it back a week. And then it was supposed to come out the last week of July. And then I got pushed back one more week to the first week of August. And 2 weeks before it hit shelves, or before it was supposed to hit shelves, it sold out at Diamond. So there was a month between it selling out and it hitting shelves at comic shops. And like, it's just the wildest day of my life. It was August 7th of last year. I'll never forget it. I'm on the West Coast, so I'm 3 hours behind the East Coast. Comic shops opened at about 11 on the East Coast, so 8 o'clock my time. At like 8:01, 8:02, I started getting phone calls from retailers. People I'd never talked to in my life that I had no idea how they got my phone number, just calling me and be like, "Hey, can I get more of this book? I just sold 20 copies. There was a line at the door. Like, I need more of this, and I need it now." And that went on for like pretty much 3 months straight. Like, between all 3 issues coming out, it didn't, like, October was the last time I got a call like that. So it was pretty wild. Like that was life changing. It was super eye opening too. Like the industry it works in a particular way, and until you experience it firsthand, like you can't, nobody can tell you how it works. Like you need to like live through it. Like, you know, like a book coming out and a hot book, like it's crazy. Like I don't really have words for it, and I'm experiencing the same thing over again with No Heroine, and in spite of like this global pandemic, it's
Right.
not.
What do you think is just draws people to want to pick up these books en masse? I mean, what do you think is it about, these stories that people enjoy?
I can't really put a finger on it. I think there are a lot of different reasons people like the books. I without trying, I think I've created some books that like have some pretty good adaptation potential. Like I don't really give a shit about movies and TV. I just had my first call with any kind of agent like that last week. Like that's how much I care about it. Like it's just
Wow.
so far in the back of my mind. But Dead End Kids and No Heroine are both pretty adaptable. Like, and it's not something I tried to do, but it definitely is the case. So I think the spec people definitely like latch onto that. I think the stories are good. Like, it's hard for me to say that and not feel like I'm like blowing smoke up my own ass. But like, their stories I like, their stories I would like to read, and I've heard very few people say like anything terrible about them. And people say whatever they want on the internet, so like, I feel pretty good about it. So I think between like having a decent story, just being able to deliver a good story over the whole series, the spec value, just like any number of reasons. Like it just depends on the person. At the end of the day, I try to tell stories that I think aren't being told in ways that aren't being told. Like there's 100 million little coming of age stories, especially in comics. You got fucking Paper Girls, and I think there's a book coming out now called Kids, and like Dead End Kids is in that realm, but it's told in a way that's unique to how I would tell a story. Like it's really unfiltered, it's raw, and it's about something really other than it's a murder mystery book that's not really about who did it. Like that's
Right.
the murder mystery element of that book is so far in the background. It's about these kids going through some shit. Like, and I think everyone can relate to that. Everyone had a bad childhood on some level.
Right. And I think that's what related with me when I read that, because I was like, I could see a lot of people relating to different characters, like just the way you wrote it. It's like, I understand what, this particular kid went through, and kind of their struggles. I was adopted, so I was, I get it.
Mhm.
Like all
Yeah.
those feelings and everything. I'm like, damn, like that you hit the nail on the head with a lot of the story with that. So
You're talking about Murphy in particular there. Murphy is 90% like just me writing myself as a 13-year-old kid. Like I mentioned, like my mom had some problems when I was a kid. And when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, my best friend's family took me in for a few years, and like it was very much a foster situation, and like I was super grateful, but I was also like 13 and didn't have the emotional capacity to really deal with all that bullshit. And I was a fucking angry kid. Like I remember I'd get so mad, like my skin would start to prickle. Like it's
man.
wild. But yeah, I mean, like, and that's just what I was tapping into. And like all that, every character's got a little bit of me in them now.
Yeah, for sure. You were saying that, Mac?
I was definitely going to say when I read the first issue of No Heroine, what I liked about it was, like you said, you're not interested in, you weren't thinking movies, you weren't thinking TV, which is refreshing, because I can't tell you how many books I read every week that it's just like, oh, this is your movie pitch. Oh yeah, you're setting this up for TV. But as I read your book, I'm like, I actually want to see this as a TV show. Like, this is really fun. And it's,
Right.
there's an honesty and a truth to the characters uh, that really stuck is monster hunting story. And it's great because people are like, oh, I'm going to write what I know. I'm going to write a really depressing story about my childhood and how bad everything was. And you've taken your own experiences and you said, I'm going to put this in a different context.
Mm-hmm.
And people can recognize the reality that's behind it while also having a good time with the story itself. So yeah, I read Grief this morning. I've never read it before. I was angry that I've never read it before because it was so good. And I'm like, these are 5-page stories that are better than some 5-issue arcs I've read. Like I want another Grief. Like I enjoyed that kind of like short, tight fiction that can tell really compact story in a nice way. And that was really refreshing as well. So, you know, I wish you all the success in the world with movies and TV, but I hope you never give up writing comics, because I'm having a good time with your story.
Never. That's actually something that I was talking about with the agent. Is like, do you have an interest in like being a producer if you get picked up? Do you want to have like a role writing the script? And I'm kind of like in the middle on that, because it's really good money. Like, I mean, like a movie script you can get like $300,000 for. Like that's not anything to turn your nose of it. But I also know that I don't know anything about screenwriting. So like, we're talking about that. But I knew that I was going to do okay in comics. Like I don't know if I'll ever be Kirkman or Mark Millar or any, like a mogul, but I knew I was going to do okay when Grief came out about the same time as Action Comics 1000. So it's like about 2 years ago. And somebody came up to me and they said, I don't know how you did it, but this book is better than Action Comics 1000 in every way. And that book had Jeff Johns on it. It had, God, who else? Dan Jurgens. I mean, like just this all-star cast. Like, yeah, short stories are a lot harder. Like it's a small space. And like, I don't necessarily agree with that compliment. But hearing somebody say that, I was like, all right, there's hope here. I should keep trying.
So with currently the way of the world going on right now, we're all going through this kind of global pandemic. There's no conventions, there's nothing. How are you finding ways to keep connected with fans? Through social media or just interacting with them online. Because I know cons is a very big thing. I remember last year you were all over the place. I mean. But how do you find yourself trying to keep connected with the fan base?
Yeah, and any way I can. Like, there's not an answer for that. Like, you can't replace that experience. Like, I do about 20 cons a year. I did about 20 signings last year. Like, I'm usually gone most weekends of the year. We actually planned my wedding last year around my con schedule because that's just how busy it was. And just, I don't know. I've been looking for ways. Like, I try to do like a lot of online stuff, like so all the online cons that they're having. Like I try to, if people ask me to be, I'll be a part of them. So I'm doing like Cadets Con this weekend, which is the little online con that Space Cadets in Houston does. I'm doing Mainframe next weekend, I think. So like doing stuff like that. I try to like stay engaged on social media. Like I spend a decent amount of time on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram every day, like just kind of like replying to comments and stuff like that, and then making sure like I'm posting up. Like I don't know, it's not the same though. Like it's just, right. But you got to do something. So like I'm trying to do like signings for shops. So like any retailer I know like had the opportunity a couple weeks ago to sort of claim a signing spot where they could like mail in books for their customers for me to sign, and then I'd send them to Chris and Shauna to sign, and like we'd get them back to them, and like sort of in lieu of like an in-person signing. It's just, I don't know, it's a lot of work trying to figure out like these things and coordinate them, but like at the end of the day it's super worth it to me. I remember when I like first went to cons and stuff, and like first like social media was coming up, and like there are all these creators that I loved, and I wanted to like tell that I love your book, and this is it did this thing for me, like it was there for me when I needed it. And like most creators, like for understandable reasons, are just super not accessible. They got other shit going on. Their lives are busy. They don't love social media. But I always wished that like more of the ones I liked were engaged, and I try to be that kind of creator. I try to just respond to comments and respond to that Facebook message somebody sent me. It's just, but it's time consuming, and like it's, you gotta do something. The world's a mess.
You
No,
want to talk about
I totally get that. And what I think is interesting about this time is this is actually, in a weird way, one of the best times for comics because there isn't really a lot of new television coming out. There's not, movie theaters are closed. There, you can't get casts together to record things. You know, people are doing live stream TV shows, but comics, you don't really have to be face to face with
Mhm.
other people to produce a comic. You can write it, you can live stream with your artist. And, you know, I'm every week I'm just looking at the shelves thinking, this is the time, especially for smaller publishers, to be, people are hungry for media.
Mhm.
People are bored. People want to read stuff. And I'm like, you should be pumping out every book you can, digital, paper. You should be getting them out there because people have nothing to do. They're just
Yeah.
locked in their homes, bored out of their mind. Give them new comics. And that's why, you know, you guys know I write reviews. That's one of the things I'm always doing. I'm like, go to the comic shops, go pick up stuff, download this book. And I think this is a great time for, you know, for people who are really looking for something to do with themselves. Go pick up some comics. Go pick up one of the trades or something, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know that when this all started kind of popping off back at the end of February, beginning of March, and then when Diamond shut down in the middle of March, I was on a call with the guys at SourcePoint trying to figure out like what we could do. Because you know, for anyone who's not super familiar with SourcePoint, it's they're very much their business model is like punk rock band. Like they do 60, 70 cons a year, and like that's most of it. Yeah. Like my first con with them was C2E2 in 2018. They were in two other cities, one in Texas, one in New Jersey that same weekend. I mean, they're everywhere all the time, but that was a big part of their revenue model. And then to have cons like pretty much go away completely, like they had to pivot really hard and figure out like how to, you know, keep those 9 full-time employees I mentioned, you know, in a job and shit. So I was on calls with them for a couple of weeks, and we were sort of figuring out like fundraising things and like what we could do to get product out to shops, because you know a lot of shops were open with no new books coming in. A lot of shops were doing curbside, had no new product, and we were able to, myself and a couple other people, privately raise a not insubstantial amount of money to be able to donate product to comic shops. So we found, let's call it $10,000. It wasn't quite that low, but for a round number, we found about 10 grand, which paid for shipping and the cost of the product at print cost, not at like, you know, retail cost. And we just sent bundles to every comic shop that was on our mailing list. We took recs from people, like, you know, for shops that maybe we weren't on the radar yet of, and we were able to really build some connections there. And I mean, the shops have paid back in kind in ordering SourcePoint books. Books are up way over what they were this time last year, while a lot of other smaller publishers are struggling still. Like, I mean, so it's a very, very interesting time. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of room for everyone to succeed together. And I think SourcePoint was really, really agile and like jumped on these opportunities and did it in a way that really, really helped people. Like it's crazy. Like I remember at the same time, a lot of the other publishers in the same space were doing like really reduced cost books that people could order and pay for. And I think that was appreciated, but like to just be able to say, here's some free shit, like make yourself some money.
Wow.
That's how you build a business relationship for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people don't, you know, even comic book people don't always realize that those smaller publishers, and they live and die on the most razor thin of margins, and they really have to have that good community connection if they want to be successful. You know, SourcePoint has really come a long way, because I remember going through cons and there'd just be a table from SourcePoint and they just have all the books out, and I'm like, who is this little publisher? They're not gonna, who's gonna, you know? And then the next year you're like, everyone's got to buy Frank's book, it's the #1 book in the country, get out there. And I'm like, who published it? They're like, SourcePoint. I but it's great. It's great. I think a lot of comic fans, we love our Marvel, we love our DC, but you can only see Batman do, jump across the rooftop so many times before you're like, what else is out there? What else is there? Superman, the X-Men, I love them, but there's only so much. And that's why I love indie books so much. And that's, there is no teenage girl fighting drug dealing vampire books coming out from Marvel and DC. There is no, they don't do that kind of story. So, but that being said, in Grief, you did a couple superhero stories. And do you have any interest in like a superhero book? Have you given any thought to doing something like that in the future? Or is that just, a little writing exercise and you're not going to go back to it?
Yeah, for sure. So the stories in Grief, just sort of as a general primer for the book, those were like my portfolio pieces. When I first started writing comics, I started with short stories because they're a lot cheaper to make mistakes on than like a one shot or a miniseries, and I wanted to kind of, figure things out on a tighter budget. So like those 10 stories in the book are my just portfolio piece. They're me fucking around. It's like, hey, I want to try a superhero story. Hey, I want to try a magic story. Hey, I want to do something with aliens, or I want to do something with narration like Scott Snyder does in Batman. This, that, and the other thing. And it kind of came together as an anthology / short story collection. Just sort of organically. Like I noticed that the stories all kind of fit together really well around this theme of the grieving process. But yeah, the short stories in there that have to do with superheroes. One of my favorite things I've ever written, Gravity, the one about the kid in the band and his dad. That's so good. I definitely have designs to write for Marvel and DC someday. I actually spent a good portion of the mornings this week reaching out to Marvel and DC editors who I don't know yet, sort of cold emailing them, getting on the radar and being like, hey, I've got these 2 books, did really well the last couple of years, let's talk, kind of things. And yeah, like I've got some stories I'm really passionate about telling that maybe I'll never get to. I've got a really good Hawkeye story that I'd love to tell one day. I love the Fantastic Four. I love Black Panther. I love Iron Fist. Like I'd love to write any of those characters, but I'd honestly write like a D-Man miniseries if somebody was gonna like give me an opportunity. I'll write a story about Wolverine's like unknown love child who is just just a normal guy. You know what I mean? Like just whatever. I'm hungry. Like I want to do this for my day job, not do it and do my day job. So yeah, superheroes are definitely on the table. I don't know that I would ever do a superhero indie book. I feel like superheroes are really well-trodden territory at this point. Like you were saying, how many times can you watch Batman jump off a roof? My go-to version of that is how many times can you watch Daredevil fight the Hand? But I think that's part of what interests me is the challenge of making it fresh. I look at a guy like Donny Cates, who I've met a handful of times, and he's been really nice to me. I wouldn't say we're friends or anything like that, but he's had a lot of success at Marvel taking characters that are kind of rusty and underutilized, sort of C-list and D-list guys, and kind of turning them around and making them new again. And that's pretty exciting storytelling territory that I would love to get into. Like, yeah, let me make Moon Knight an A-list character someday. You know what I mean?
I'd love to see Moon Knight an A-list character.
Oh man, that's awesome. Yeah, again, a lot of great comments, and I think what you were saying before too, like people are spending a lot of time at home now, so they're not just reading, whatever's latest in Marvel or whatever's latest in DC. They're spreading their wings and kind of dipping their toes in other things. That's me. I was such a Marvel guy for such a long time that I never picked up an indie book until someone's like, hey, pick this up, read this. I started reading The Goon and just fell in love with The Goon.
The Goon's so good. So good.
I just love it. So, and then like, reading Dead End Kids and, get into No Heroine. I mean, it's just really good storytelling without all the, superhero stuff, I guess, added in, and it's relatable. You know what I mean? Like we talked about before how Frank and I, have a pretty similar background when it comes. I lost my parents by the age of 5 to drug use. And I keep a picture of my dad here, just to, him, looking good, being in shape, just to kind of motivate me to just keep being the best version of myself. And I think, like, when you're talking about Kayla or whatever, she not only is she fighting like real demons, but she's fighting her personal demons. It's really interesting to see like that take.
That's on the nose metaphor.
Yeah, I thought the whole while I was reading, I was like, this is incredible, and it's you see the struggle. I'm not going to ruin it because everybody needs to read this book, but I mean, I think you just did a bang up job, like hitting that. Like, I feel sometimes dealing with your own personal demons is a lot harder than dealing with a vampire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and the beautiful thing about the vampires is they're kind of like the physical, literal manifestation of her problem, right? Like she's punching her problem for real. But you know what I love about the book? I don't know if you guys got a chance to read the second and third issue, which aren't out yet, but like it's just the quiet moments. Like there's just a scene in the first one where she's in a church, like kind of just praying to herself before she goes on her suicide mission. In the second one, the opening scene where she's sitting in that hotel room, like, yeah, it's just I love. And this is, I think, an indie comics thing, like me kind of doing my own thing. Like you get to kind of spend these quiet moments. There's a scene in the first issue of Dead End Kids where Murphy and Ben are just talking on the walkie-talkies, about moms and stuff like that. Like it's just that quiet, like real deep shit that like I think that's what works about the books, at least for me. Like those are the things that I look for. I'm reading Extremity right now for the first time, Daniel Warren Johnson from a couple years back. And there's a lot of the same stuff in there. I mean, this is like a pretty epic fantasy kind of sci-fi book, and it's wild, and I love every minute of it. But there's like a lot of really quiet panels with just like somebody giving somebody else a look, and like I think shit like that is really good storytelling. And that's probably the thing that's missing most for me from Big Two comics. It's like, it's so plot driven that who gives a shit? Like Aquaman is a really interesting character, but like no one ever gives me a reason to care about him. And I use Aquaman as a very specific example because he's like one of the least loved characters, and he's got one of the most interesting lores. Like it's just way underutilized, and nobody is given a reason to care about it.
No, I get that, and I get too that with the indie books, which are my great love, there's a lot more, like you said, a lot more freedom, and especially freedom to experiment with things that Marvel, DC, they're not going to take a risk on. I mean, they'll cancel titles because the sales drop 1,000 and they're not going to risk anything. Where I just read a book from Image that it was an oversized book, the entire story, no dialogue for the entire story, an outer space, futuristic sci-fi.
The one with the rocket on the cover?
Yes. Hedra is the name of it.
Yeah, I've not had to read it, but I heard good things. I'm
just flipping through it. I'm like, this is so good. This is the kind of thing that, comics should be willing to take a chance. And I think that's what I like about independent comics is that they give the creators the freedom to explore that. But what I wanted to say was I did read issues 2 and 3 of No Heroine, and I have to say issue 3 really, made me angry because it was the last one. How can you end the story in 3? I know it says, there's definitely more stories to come in the future, but I'm like, no, there can't just be 3 stories. I want to see this whole world. Like I am so intrigued by just the lore you're creating here with this. So I'm going to put you on the spot and say, when are we going to get some more? Like, are you working on these? Is this coming down the pipe in the not too distant future?
I can't commit to an answer on that. I can say that the book has exceeded expectations at the publisher and in terms of revenue, and that is usually something that allows somebody to make a second or third or fourth volume of something. I can also tell you that Chris and I are talking almost daily about what something like that would look like, but nothing is official yet. I would definitely like to. I know what Kayla's last story is already, so like I would like to fill in some of that middle ground for sure.
Man, that's awesome. And speaking of which, like you guys were releasing some awesome exclusives for San Diego Comic-Con. There was one in particular that I saw. I was like, holy crap. It was the limited 5 copies.
The gold one,
the gold cover. I was like, it was so sick. I mean, out of my price range, but
out of mine too.
incredibly awesome. How did you guys come up with these kind of variants that you have?
It's actually a funny story, and I don't know if I should tell it. So Kincaid Ryan, the guy who did the art, he's just an awesome artist. He's doing stuff for like DC these days, and he's doing all kinds of great stuff. He actually did that art as fan art for No Heroine. Like he's a buddy of mine. Like he got to see the book ahead of everyone, and he was just like, I drew this picture of your girl, and I was like, oh, this is really sweet, and I posted it on Facebook, and like the reaction to it was like crazy. Like it was nuts. Like people were demanding. So we were like trying to figure out a way to like use it because there are a lot of covers for the book. Like I mean, we're probably by the end of it we'll probably have 30 different versions of the book.
Oh,
like and some of that's like reproduced art,
right,
in different ways. But like there are at least 11 or 12 different covers for the book, which is good and bad. It's a testament to how much people love the book and how marketable it is, but it's also a lot of work. But yeah, Ryan just did this cover, not even a cover, he did his art, and I was like, yo, we gotta do something with this. This is awesome. And we had a book planned for a San Diego release, and like 5 days before we like scrapped those plans and like just hashed out like what these exclusives for San Diego would be. So we ended up with like a regular trade dress version for like a really affordable price. Like I think it was like $15.
Yep.
Limited to 100. Then we had like a tier up from that for $100. You got that, a virgin version of it, and a metal version of it. Which is like a super good deal for a metal cover and 2 other covers. And then like we're like, let's do like the Lamborghini of comic book covers. So we did a metal version printed on gold plated metal. It's not real gold, but it was limited to 5 public copies. I think there were 10 copies total. The other 5 were for the creators. But yeah, and they were like $300, and they were the first thing to sell out. Which
I believe it, yeah.
And I actually know 4 of the 5 people who bought them, so I can attest to the fact that they were actually sold. Yeah, it was wild, and like I said, this kind of like came out of nowhere, and this is what I was talking about earlier with SourcePoint. SourcePoint being a small company and like being agile, be able to like pivot real hard and real quick on something, like make it happen is one of the reasons they've had so much success so quickly. Like, I mean, most people I think still probably haven't heard of SourcePoint or don't recognize the name. But if you were at C2E2 this year and last year, we were in Image's spot. Like Image wasn't there the last 2 years. We took their booth spot because our display is that big and like we have that many books.
Mac, did you go to C2E2 this year?
C2E2? Of course I did. Who wouldn't go to C2E2?
I mean,
the last con of 2020.
The only con of 2020, man. Jeez.
I got my C2E2 pin on. It was funny because we were there and we were walking around, and we had been, a whole bunch of our club members were there, and we were walking around and going, oh yeah, you're talking about this virus thing. Everyone make sure you wash your hands, not. And literally we got back I got back from Chicago, and that week just this got shut down. My job got shut down. Like everything was getting closed. And we were like, well, hopefully that wasn't the last Comic-Con of 2020. I think it was the last Comic-Con of 2020 because everything just kind of
cut off. Honestly,
I got about $6,000 worth of airplane vouchers.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I'll get to use them eventually. It's fine
for sure. Yeah, same here. I was supposed to set up at my first con this month, but was canceled. was canceled, which is okay. I was a little nervous anyway, so I was like, I don't know if I can do this. But yeah, we were supposed to set up and have some interviews and stuff like that at our booth, but sadly it was canceled. And they're gonna try to do it again in March, but we don't know. So
yeah. Well, look, it's I don't want to get political or anything like that, but the shit ain't getting better. So anyone who's listening who's not taking it too seriously, come on, just straighten up, take it seriously.
wear that mask.
We could be done with this in 2 weeks. Like that's all it takes. 2 weeks in the house. If everyone just stayed in their place for 2 weeks, we'd be done with this. That shrimp taco and that margarita, it ain't worth it. It ain't fucking worth it.
They're saying it could be worst case scenario. They're saying there might not be any cons through April. So, it might be a while before we can,
I don't want to
get back and
alarms,
get out there in that.
I've been talking with a couple publishers, like internal conversations, and like some of them are talking about no cons in 2021 if things don't get better in the next couple months.
Oof.
No, which is why I'm saying take this shit seriously.
Yes, 100%. People need, that's why people need to stay home and read comic books. They shouldn't be going out. They should, read their comics at home.
Take this shit seriously so I can go get Concred instead.
Oh man, tell me about it. There was a couple.
I escaped everything. I lucked out. Like 5-6 of the guys I went with got the con crud real bad. One guy missed the first. He's never missed a day of work. He went to C2E2 for the first time and missed an entire week when he got back. He had never been that sick in his life. Ooh. He honestly thought that he might have had COVID because he's like, I've never been that bad of shape. And yet I spent the whole con next to him, hugged him, hung out with him. I work at a public school, so I already work kind of in a petri dish. So my immune system's pretty good already.
Yeah, same. I work retail. I was just like, it was a ton of crap. It's so much you do, is so much. But you try to look towards the positives, pick up a new hobby. That's what I've been doing. I've been just trying to educate myself, doing a ton of things, whether it's video editing, getting better at interviews or speaking and things like that. I mean, for yourself, Frank, what have you been doing to kind of occupy your time being at home a little more?
Like I was saying earlier, I got married last year and I spent like the 6 weeks leading up to my wedding and 3 weeks after my wedding not home, which it's a fucking miracle that I ended up getting married because that's pretty bad. Man, my con schedule was set before we got engaged, so like it was kind of like we couldn't do anything about it at that point. But it's just been nice to like be home with my wife, like because I would have been gone like the same number of weekends this year, probably more for signings and stuff. So like being able to hang out here on the weekends with her and like just watch some TV and like take our dog for a walk, like it's just like weird little shit that like you don't think of as being all that important until you realize you don't have it as much as you should. So that's been cool. But like at this point, she's like, nah, I'm ready for conventions to start again. Like I want you gone.
You want to do something crazy too. I was telling you guys I went to New York earlier today. I passed by Midtown Comics. I'll be dropping that video sometime this week. But they were talking about New York Comic Con and how we're like 2 months out and they still haven't announced any cancellations for that con. So I mean, I don't think it's gonna happen. New York Comic Con's a pretty big con.
COVID hospital in the convention center right now.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, I guess they're not gonna cancel it until they they say, hey, you guys, you can't have the convention this year. But it's still, even Baltimore too, which is in October as well, they haven't closed their doors yet. I mean, maybe they're waiting for a miracle, but I also know that convention center there as well was also used as a makeshift hospital. And that's what I was telling people. I'm like, I really don't feel like I really don't feel like going at all. Like,
that's where I'm at. Like, even if they did happen at this point, I'd have to say no. Like, I mean, between being at an airport, going and coming, like, being on a plane and then surrounded by thousands, like, it's just like, why risk it? Like I'm not even trying to fuck with like tacos and margaritas right now. Like I'm telling you, I've been in my house for like 5 months and I ain't got sick. Like there's something to it.
Oh man, that's great. Let's see here. So no heroin number 2. Oh, sorry, I had a question. So is that completely sold out now, right?
Yeah, so it's not sold out on Diamond yet because reorders haven't come in from them. They'll come in probably this week. But I know it's sold out at the publisher, so there's none left for reorders. So it is sold out. It's just not official yet, but it is official.
Go get them,
We
please.
called them this morning, so it's official.
Sick. You were saying, Mac?
Oh, I was going to say, well, first off, on that point, if you have a local comic shop like I do, or 9 Comics, you can get a pull box. The whole reason I'm able to get, I got Dead End Kids #1, I got No Heroine #1, because I just called my shop. I said, throw it in my pull. So when you guys hear, this book sold out, this book sold out, this book sold out, doesn't mean it's sold out at your shop. It means they can't reorder any. So if you want one, you need to call them, or you're going to put a little push there for your local shop. But what what you put out so far, I was just kind of curious about like what your own personal history with comic books was. Like when did you really become aware of comics? What did you start reading when you were younger? What was it about comics that drew you in a way that other kinds of writing wasn't as appealing?
Yeah, I could definitely talk about that real quick. I'm going to double back on what you're saying about supporting little comic shops and pre-ordering and stuff. So last year when Dead End Kids came out, like the pre-orders were insane. They were really good, but like a lot of people found out about the book late or didn't pre-order it and like rushed to buy copies, and like there was a super big shortage. The prices on eBay. I mean, like there was a point where like the first issue was going for $40 for a couple weeks straight. Like that. I mean, that helps nobody, but flippers doesn't. I don't get more money. You have a harder time finding these issues. So like if I could take out the soapbox real quick, pre-order your fucking comics. Like tell your retailer you want the book, and they will order it for you. If you don't tell them you want the book, they're not going to order an extra copy just in case you want it, unless it's Venom or Thor or Dark Knight's Metal, like a book that they know somebody will buy. Dead End Kids, No Heroine, indie books, like they're pretty high risk books. Like retailers take a risk ordering extra copies of those books they might not sell, and that makes them order conservatively. So if you hear about a book you like or you think you might like, No Heroine, Dead End Kids, Ogres, Nora, fucking White Ash over at Scout, Spencer and Locke at Action Lab, like these really great books, fucking pre-order it. Like just tell your shop you want it. I know it's risky, like you might not like the book and you don't have to get any more, but it's the only way to guarantee it. And it helps everybody in the chain, including yourself, because then you don't have to pay $40 for Dead End Kids #1. So like if you take anything away from this conversation, pre-order your comics. Like if you hear about a cool book, call your retailer, email your retailer, Facebook your retailer, and be like, hey, add this to my pull list. It's so simple and it helps everybody. Back to your question. How did I get into comics? I was born in 1987, so I'm 32 years old. And I grew up in a sort of golden age of awesome comic book adaptation cartoons. I came up on a healthy diet of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which ran from I think 87 to 92 or 93. So I watched that like as probably the first thing I ever watched. Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man the Animated Series, X-Men, the lesser talked about but still pretty good Fantastic Four and Hulk cartoons that were on in the early 90s. Power Rangers, which wasn't a comic book, but was very much in the superhero comic booky vein. I grew up watching all these things, and at the same time, my mom was like a big sci-fi head. Like she loved X-Files. She loved sort of like the corny 60s sci-fi stuff, like I Dream a Genie and Bewitched and the Munsters. So I watched a lot of Nick at Night. And like that kind of primed me to be a sci-fi and fantasy and horror fan pretty young. I picked up my first comic in 1997. I'll never forget it because it was a fucking awful comic. It was a book called Spider Boy, It was from the DC Marvel mashup
Oh,
amalgam universe.
Oh boy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
10-year-old Frank walked into a CVS, picked up this book off a spinner rack, and bought it. And I own it still. It's terrible. But that was my first sort of foray into comics, and I was like a casual fan from that point forward. I really got into comics, started collecting, started reading like everything. My senior year of high school, about 2006, and I've been a diehard kind of ever since. So like, coming up on 20 years. Nah, I guess 15, 16 years. And yeah, and that's kind of how it is. I've always been a reader. I went to a really good high school in Hunterdon County, New Jersey, where we had like block scheduling, so we did 4 classes for half a year and then 4 classes for the second half of the year, and that allowed me to sort of build a really English heavy curriculum. So I was taking a lot of AP and honors creative writing classes and lit classes in high school. I ended up going to college, and I got an English degree and a communications degree, so a lot of writing and reading. I have 2 master's degrees in creative writing. So like writing and reading have just sort of always been kind of the things I've been passionate about, and comics have always been the medium that I sort of identified most with. Yeah, comics are just kind of there for me. Like I had a garbage childhood, and reading Batman, Superman, Spider-Man was just kind of like a way for me to duck out of that for a little bit, a little escapism.
I definitely get that. Not to sound like I'm jumping on the train, but I also had parents that dealt with substance abuse issues growing up, and just like you said, there were. I'm a little bit older than you. I was born in '79, so I'm 41. But
you don't look a day over 40.
That's yeah. I went to the comic shops, way too young. I actually still have my copy of Spider Boy too. So if you ever wanna chat, let me know. But I picked up Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtles when I was like 9, 10 years old. Like way too young to be reading the black and white Eastman and Laird Ninja Turtle comics. I'm like, it shocked my little brain. And then when I got a little bit older, I was picking up Wolverine comics. But yeah, I totally get that escapism. Like you can just get away from the world, and you can spend as much time as you want with a comic. A TV show is 30 minutes, an hour, it's over and done with. But there are comics that I've read and reread and gone back through and looked at the artwork, and everything from Watchmen to Spider Boy, whatever is out there. There's a lot of good stuff to kind of play around with. So yeah, I definitely get what you're talking about with that. And I have a degree in English Lit too. So yeah, English degrees unite.
Nice. We can talk about our debt later.
No. I am fortunate in that I managed to pay mine off. So
I'm getting close. I think not this January, the January after I'll be done. So
that's it. Buy more books. Buy more books, guys. Let's do it.
yeah, for real. Actually, you know what? This is totally a left turn, but one of the retailers who did a cover for No Heroine has made an insane amount of money. Like they Hive Comics did the Peach Momoko covers.
Mm-hmm.
So we had 1, 2, and 3 each had a Peach cover, and they did 500 runs, and they sold out 500 copies of the first 2. The third one isn't on sale yet, but they also did like metal versions of it that were like $100. Dude was telling me he's like, yeah, I paid off my mortgage and my college loans this year. Dude, I haven't even got my royalties check yet. I don't write comics. Make incentive covers and sell them for people. It's a very lucrative business.
That's so nice.
Team Club should do exclusive covers. You guys should get in on that.
Well, we do. Well, we do. We collab with Counterpoint, right? I think it is.
Yes, we've done some with Counterpoint. We just did one with Illust Illuminati.
Yeah.
Who does the Salve. He does stuff through Indiegogo or Kickstarter. He does Kickstarter books. We have had some collaborations with a few. I don't know if we've got a Peach Momoko cover for the club coming out. Like her stuff, it's so funny. Like, I've never heard of her, and then all of a sudden, there's like 85 different variants of her covers for everything, and it's just the place. It's like, who is this person who nothing, and then suddenly everything. So I saw the covers for No Heroine by her, and I'm like, these are spectacular.
I bought the art to the first one. It's on its way to me right now in the mail from Japan.
Wow.
It was not cheap.
I believe. I believe. So let me ask a question. So if you could pick another artist to do, from, anywhere, who would you pick to say, here, can you just hook me up, do a set to cover for me, please?
For a cover? That's a hard question. I've gotten to work with a lot of the artists that I really would like to. Like, it's just worked out that way. I mean, this is pretty low hanging fruit, but Alex Ross would be a delight to work with. I mean, like just to be able to say I did it. I like Andrea Sorrentino's covers a lot too. Like everyone hated Secret Empire, but I thought it had some of the best comic book covers of that year. I think he's got a really good design aesthetic. Who else? Tom Mueller, who's doing all the design work for X-Men right now. Like some of his covers really pop off for me. Hickman, he does covers every once in a while. Like I anyone who's got like a really strong design aesthetic and does things that are kind of a little bit different, I would be super interested in working with. I don't know if they'd make good incentive covers. I don't think everyone has the same sort of love for these things as I do. But like, if I was being selfish and I got to pick somebody, definitely lean in that direction.
Sure.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of. I've noticed lately that there have been a lot more of the big name artists and authors they're still working for the big two, but they're starting to dip their toes. I'm seeing a lot more. Hickman's got Decorum, which is a spectacular book. It's coming out from Image. Snyder's got Undiscovered Country. It seems like a lot of the bigger writers are giving legitimacy to some of the smaller publishers and putting a spotlight on them, while at the same time they're getting that freedom to play around with things in a way that they couldn't before. Like when you read Snyder's run on Metal, his Dark Knight's Metal series, I love Scott Snyder. I'm a huge fan. You read his books, as crazy and wild as it gets, at the end of the day, all the toys got to go back in the box in a condition that they can still be played with by the next writer. Where with an independent comic, you can kill anyone you want. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to. You're not a slave to continuity. Right. So, I think that we're on the verge. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my selfish wish, but I really think we're on the verge of an independent comic kind of renaissance, like we had. I remember in the '90s when I was a young lad in the '90s. You'd hit the comic shop and there'd be Marvel, DC, and then here's the Image display and the Valiant display. And like, there were all these, they were really pushing, the independent comics, and Marvel and DC were kind of seen as, the elder statesmen. Kids wanted to read the independents, and DC got Vertigo, and you had, the Milestone lines and all of the lines that came out of Image. And then when the '90s crash happened, a lot of those smaller publishers kind of folded. And now we're starting to see some of those start popping back up again. We're starting to see, I've had people reach out to me and say, what is Milestone Comics? What were they all about? And Valiant keeps putting out books. What are they about? What is Source Point Press? What books do they put out? Have you read anything by them? So I think that there is an interest and a hunger for those smaller publishers. And I want to see, Frank, I want to see you work for one of the big two, but I'm going to be selfish and say, I want to see you keep working with smaller publishers too, because I really like the stuff that you've produced for them so far. And, you know, like you said, I hope that they give you something big that you can breathe fresh life into. You know, if you write a Moon Knight book, I'm not a big Marvel guy, but if you write a Moon Knight book, I will buy that book. So
all right, I'm gonna hold you to that. I can say this much. My attitude about the whole thing is SourcePoint has been incredibly good to me. Like I was saying earlier, they more or less let me do whatever I want, however I want it, like within reason, which I think has led to better books. I'm certainly looking to raise my profile as a writer and bring in audiences that are outside of SourcePoint's scope. And I am having conversations with other publishers that are tiers up from there at this point. I can't say anything about those right now. Those are really fresh conversations, but they're going really well. But my sort of attitude today is like, even if I published with Boom or Image or whoever, I would still do, one for them, one for SourcePoint, one for them, one for SourcePoint. Just because like, I believe in SourcePoint's sort of mission. And they believed in me, when I was getting started, and if I can go to Boom and do a killer series and net a bunch of new fans and bring them back to SourcePoint, that would be me paying it back and doing my part to make that company more successful. And I think that loyalty is absolutely earned. They have been super good to me. And yeah, like I would like to see them become like, I have a very real expectation that they will replace Dark Horse in the next 4 or 5 years. Like they will occupy that sort of dark indie space for crime and horror comics for sure.
That's awesome.
Especially since Dark Horse just lost Alien and Predator, and they've been losing. Oh,
yeah, no, Dark Horse.
sad.
Dark Horse is not looking great. And I like a lot of what Dark Horse puts out. I read a lot of it, and I'd be sorry to see them go, but I don't see a whole lot of viability left. And IDW is kind of feeling the same way. Like they've got a bunch of messes one after the other. I hope both succeed. I hope both make it through. I would love to have a book with a Dark Horse icon on it and my name. But I think there's going to be a big shakeup the next couple of years, and things aren't going to, Marvel and DC will still be Marvel and DC. I definitely see Boom replacing Image as the go-to for like big creator-owned books. But we'll have to see how it plays out. You know what I mean?
No, you mentioned a couple times about how you have to promote yourself, and I was just watching an interview the other day with Josh Williamson and Chip Zdarsky, and talking about what it is to be, trying to get a book published, and Chip Zdarsky, he was great. He said, I don't want to say what book I want to write because I'm worried that they're going to kick the person who's writing it off or threaten them and say, oh, we're going to bring Zdarsky on to do the book for you. But, as a fresher, younger, newer writer who's getting his feet wet with the independents, if you had any advice for people who are like, I want to write comic books, I want to get into it, what would you tell them about the hustle of, just getting a book published, just getting recognized by a publisher?
All right. So I'm going to full transparency. I'm the worst person to ask about that because I didn't even pitch my own book. The first one that I had published, Andy Schmidt, who used to be an editor at Marvel, he was one of the people who sort of designed Annihilation and Annihilation Conquest. He was one of the editors on Ed Brubaker's Winter Soldier run. He was my first writing mentor, and he pitched the book to SourcePoint without telling me, like not behind my back, obviously, not in a bad way, but he passed it along to them. And I was at New York Comic Con in 2017, and I walked up to the SourcePoint booth to introduce myself to Travis McIntyre, the editor there. And we were talking for about 10 minutes, and he kind of cocks his head, and it's a big guy. Looks like Tormund from Game of Thrones, crazy red hair, big chubby guy with red beard. He's like, "What'd you say your name was?" I was like, "Oh, it's Frank Gogol." He's like, "Oh yeah, I just read your book." I'm like, "Nah, you're having a stroke. I didn't submit anything." And he's like, "It's grief, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And so it turns out that somebody had submitted the book on my behalf, and they were picking it up before I even met them. So I can't speak to that in a personal way. And then Dead End Kids I pitched as a finished book, and then No Heroine I pitched without anything done. So it's all three of the times I've had books picked up, it's been very atypical. But what I can say is, for somebody who's starting out, definitely, if you want to do it, just fucking do it. Don't talk about doing it. Do it. It's just the same thing as if you want to lose weight and go to the gym. Don't talk about losing weight. Don't research till your fucking eyes fall out, like, fad diets. Just get up, go to the gym. If you want to write, get up and write. I have 4 degrees from college. 2 of them are master's degrees. They're all in writing or writing adjacent fields. And I did everything I could to prepare to be a writer. And I got out of college and I didn't write for almost 10 years. I talked a lot about writing. I had a lot of false starts. I wanted to do it really bad, but everything changed when 4 years ago I decided to just fucking do it. Like, just try, finish a thing, sit down, do the work, finish it. And it doesn't have to be quick. If you want to write a 60,000 word novel, if you wrote 200 words a day, you'd be done in like a year. At that rate, but you'd be done. So do it in manageable chunks. Sit down, do the work, do it in bite-sized pieces. I write scripts 4 pages a day, like usually 4 pages a day. And that means I finish a script in a week, which sounds really fast, but it's just 4 pages a day, right? And if you do 2 pages a day, it's 2 weeks. And that's, what's that work out to? 2 months to finish a miniseries? Like, it's not hard to sit down and do 2 pages a day. It's less than an hour of work. That's 4% of your day. So yeah, my advice would be sit down and do the fucking work. Like, don't talk about it. Just do it. And then when it comes to pitching, make sure that the book you've made is a good book. Like, don't cheap out on the lettering. Make sure you hire somebody to do the lettering. Invest in yourself. It's not cheap to make a comic, but it's investing in yourself. I've spent a lot of money to become a comic creator, and it is 1000% a pay-to-play thing, just by nature of having to pay other people to do the work. But don't think of it as spending money on that you're not getting something out of. This might be how I convinced myself to justify it, but some people like to travel, some people collect action figures and omnibuses. We were talking about that earlier. There are things that we, as people, hobbies, that we spend thousands of dollars on a year without thinking about it. For me, it was just a matter of transitioning that money from one thing, like going to the movies or traveling or whatever it is, to making comics. Making comics brings me a lot of joy. I don't think twice about spending money to pay my artists because I like getting those pages and I like going to cons and selling the books to people. But it's very much a mindset. Like, if you want to make comics, like, it's a really hard, jagged pill to swallow, but it costs a shit ton of money to make a comic book. But if it brings you happiness, it's not money wasted if you don't make the money back. And if you can adopt that mentality that you don't need to make the money back for it to be a success, then you can probably make that money back a lot easier.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I agree. Big shout out to letterers and colorists. And, those are the people, it's like they never get noticed unless there's something wrong. But if you don't have a good letterer on your book,
yeah,
man, I've read some that I'm just like, this, just after one issue, if I can't read it, yeah, that's
lettering is super important. Even like from like a usability standpoint, lettering is super important in ways people don't realize. Like, sometimes, like, the layout on a page's art comes back and it's not super clear which panels come in what order, and the lettering bubbles and the narration bubbles or blocks are what lead your eye and help you make sense of the page. Also, if you have bad lettering, like, you could have Jim Lee on art, and if it has bad letters, it's going to be a bad book. Right. As steps go further, like writing, art, color, letters, the elements become more important to the book being a good book in terms of like a product. So you could have a really badly written book with okay art and okay colors and really great letters, and that book will sell a lot better than Alan Moore writing a stick figure book that has horrible colors and no letters. Like, it's a weird psychology thing, but bad letters turn most people off.
And do you just because I don't know, but do you usually get a lot of input? Like, let's say when the artist does something, they'll show you, say, hey, what do you think about this? Like, is this how you when you write the story, right? For example, for Kayla, is that kind of how you pictured her in your mind, or do you kind of just give the artist that leeway to say, okay, like try to bring my words into life?
So that relationship is for me, it's pretty loose. Like I don't really script very heavily. I don't use a lot of camera directions. Essentially, my goal when I write a script is to write like an IKEA instruction manual. Like, what are the instructions to give to the artist to make this story happen? But I hire the artist to do the art and do the imagining of what that looks like because they know better than me. So you don't hire like the plumber to come fix your toilet and then tell him how to do it. He's the expert. You brought him in for a reason. But you can tell him like what's wrong with the toilet and then he can figure out like how to fix it from there. So for me, a script it's a set of instructions. It's pretty bland. It's panel 1, Kayla walks into the room. Panel 2, Kayla punches a dude. Panel 3, dude blocks the punch, et cetera, et cetera. And then specifically with Chris on No Heroine, because we both live in the US and because we knew each other and had like a really good relationship before working together, we would hop on the phone a bunch and kind of talk through scenes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like I scripted really loosely for him. I choreographed where he asked me to. He was less comfortable on action scenes than he was on other scenes. So I would script more heavily in those areas for him. So it's just, it's about the working relationship. Like I know one of the biggest mistakes most young writers make is or not young writers, new writers is like way over scripting, like way too much dialogue for what fits on the page, calling out every single camera direction and like leaving their artist, like suffocating them, like with no ability to like, at that point you're hiring a freelancer, not a collaborator. Like, you're saying, do this thing exactly how I want it. And that makes for a bad collaboration. Like you want your artist and letter and color to feel like that it's their book too. And like even with me, like editors too, like editors have a lot of input in how the story develops. And like, it's not common to credit editors on the front cover, but if I ever used an editor for like a whole book, I would 100% credit them on the front of the book because it's a team effort. Like it's like football. Like you got the quarterback and the lineman and the nickelback and everybody, like they all win the game. Even though the quarterback gets all the credit, everybody was there on the field doing the thing. And that's kind of how it is in comics. Writers get a lot of the credit. Artists get a lot of the credit. Everybody else kind of flies under the radar. But that's changing, and it's for the best because colors and letters, I think, are more important. I mean, no disrespect to pencils and anchors because I love what they do, but the difference between what they do and the colors is it's like a coloring book page at first. Like it's just lines. And that's fine. It's incredibly technically skilled and awesome to look at. But colorists, when they render the page and add shading and stuff like that, it adds depth and a weird kind of beauty to it. Colorists needed more appreciation for sure. Letters just as much.
I do have a question. Any Marvel method over at Source Point?
Probably. I don't know. It's so because it's creator owned. Nothing is really like in house. People create books and they pitch them, and SourcePoint picks them up. One writer, Garrett Gunn, who's a good buddy of mine, I know that he writes more Marvel style for his artists than I do. Like I write full script, but loosely. Garrett will write, a brief description of what happens on the page and then kind of dialogue it after the fact. So it's possible. It does happen, but like there's no in-house editing. Like people bring their books to SourcePoint as like a middleman publisher, not for developing the project.
Gotcha. Sweet. Let's see. So many comments. Just have to sift through them. So when's 3 coming out?
So 2 is going to drop on the 26th of August. So what's that? That's like 3 weeks from now. And then the last issue drops September 30th.
Awesome. I put the link for both your Twitter and your Instagram, so they could go follow you because you're always. What I love about your page is you're always saying, "Hey, go order these now. Hey, stock is low. Make sure you go. Make sure you go order it." And that's why I love like following your page because hey, you're letting people know like, "Hey, guys, these are going quick." And I'm always surprised. I think there was a post that you're like, "Hey guys, don't buy these on eBay right now. You can still order them.
Yeah.
You can still get them in at your local shops because, man, just looking at some of the prices on eBay sold listings is just nutty.
Yeah.
Holy,
people are paying them. That book you're talking about was me posting all the sold listings from eBay.
The sold listings, yeah.
Before the book came out and while it was still open for pre-order. Like, do people just like wasting money? You can get this book for $3.99. I think some states don't have sale tax, so like you can get it for that exact price. I mean, but that's a double-edged sword. Like if we're being like super transparent, on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, you can still order this book. On the other hand, it's a little bit of a dog whistle to the speculators.
Right.
I want to clue them in because they drive sales too. Like they're the ones who go in and most retailers look at what the speculators are looking at, not a lot of other things. So like if the speculators are talking about it, that's good PR. But at the same time, like I'm not trying to support flippers like who are making. I make about 50 cents an issue sold, give or take. They're making about a 500 to 700% increase on like what they paid for the book. Like, and I just that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Like, and that's just predatory as fuck. You know what I mean?
I gotcha. I sometimes feel the same way when you're trying to pick up a book and you just can't because they're all gone as soon as doors open and
exactly.
there's nothing left.
That's the lesson I learned on Dead End Kids last year. We were talking about that earlier, and that's why I do like lots and lots of posts about, hey, 2 weeks left. Hey, there's 400 copies left at Source Point. Hey, this is sold out. It's just everything I can do, and like I've really tried to champion having cheaper prices on things. Like we did a second printing of Grief that just finished the soliciting, and I worked with SourcePoint to make sure the price went down. The first version was 15. The new version's $10. Like I just want things to be accessible and available to people because like what the fuck's the point of a really hot comic that nobody can read? Like if the speculators buy up all the number ones, nobody's gonna buy the number two because they couldn't get the number one. Like it's just it's a constant uphill battle to make sure that like things are in print and printed enough and like people know about them. And I definitely spend 5 times as much time talking about these things and letting people know about them as I do making them, which is kind of frustrating because I'd like to just keep making them.
Right. Not talk about it so much. But yeah, I always appreciate that. I always appreciate it. It was like, hey guys, like last call, go. You need to go now because there's no joke. Once they're gone, and kind of have no other choice but then to go on the secondhand market. And,
yeah. And it's crazy too. It's like on Dead End Kids, like I promoted real hard. Like I went crazy and for like 3.5 months, like any opportunity I can get to tell people about the book, podcast, YouTube, cons, whatever. And it wasn't enough. So this year, the book was supposed to originally come out in June. I started in January. I did 70 podcasts this year. I did like 22 YouTube channel interviews. And still, same problem. Like not enough people pre-ordered it. And I mean, pre-orders were great. They were double what Dead End Kids did. Like, I mean, it was on par with like a Dark Horse book debut issue. But still, like, people weren't aware of the book. Like, so like, it's just, again, an uphill battle trying to figure out like where people hear about books and make sure that like you get the word out. It gets a little bit easier each time though. Like as more people like find me and I have them in my general sphere of influence, like if they follow me on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, it gets a little bit easier, but at the same time, the bar keeps going up because you want each series to do better than the last one. So, but it's, I get up at 5 and I go to bed at midnight and half that time is me sitting at the computer making this happen. So it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure it is. For sure it is. Mac, do you have any more questions?
SourcePoint going to do trade releases? Yeah, is SourcePoint going to do trade releases of any of these?
Yeah. So the Dead End Kids Volume 1 came out in March in trade.
Okay.
I've actually got a copy right here. I've got about 80 copies right here. But yeah, this guy came out the last week comic shops were open before everything shut down in March. So that was pretty lucky. And I just called it Volume 1. So that take that however you want. And then I'm putting together the No Heroine trade currently. I'm most of the way done, sort of outlining like what that's going to look like, and putting it together. So no solicit date on that, but it might be solicited sooner than people think. There's something else that we're going to solicit in November, so I'm thinking maybe we'll try and get those two things lined up to solicit at the same time. We'll see.
That's so exciting.
The short answer is, yeah, we're going to collect them in trades. We already have.
Awesome. All right. Mac, do you have anything else?
You want to know my social security number?
It's funny when you say that you've done, a crap ton of interviews and things getting out. There's always a part of me that feels a little bad because I'm sure that, we've already asked you the same questions you've been asked like 10,000 times.
I've been on autopilot for the last hour and a half. But it's fun. It's fun. You get comfortable. You get to have a little fun with the answers after you've said them enough times. I don't mind.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and being willing to chat about the book one more time. And I do hope that we see a lot more from you, from SourcePoint, from Boom, from Image, from Dark Horse, from Marvel, DC, whoever will. I really hope that we see a lot more from you in the future. And when you're super famous and successful, you'll come back on the show and be like, "Who were you guys again?" I don't.
that would not happen. I have very little awareness of my fame, and I say fame with like air quotes. Like people to some extent somewhere know my name for some reason, but I am not famous. But I am so like wildly unaware of it that I believe, and I actually do believe that you guys are doing me a service by having me on, not the other way around.
No,
and I think that's true of every podcast. You guys are taking time out of your night to let me talk about my shit. Like that's a gift.
Right. I think for us too, like we always kind of want to talk to people who we really, first of all, who's doing something different, right? Like, you always want to try to get like the biggest name. For me, I rather get those people who are just doing really great stuff, really great writing, really great art. They might not be, hugely known or a big name, like you were saying before, like a Kirkman, but who's producing really solid stuff because we want people to read it. We want people to pick these things up and because it not only does it help, you guys out, like people at SourcePoint, but it's also helping out these small shops as well. And then think for us as we're a comic book club. We're not like a Marvel club or a DC club. We're a comic club. So as long as we find something that we enjoy, we're always going to say we're going to assist on people picking these things up and reading it because to me, I always enjoy a story I can relate to. I can't relate to a guy in tights flying in the sky, but I can relate to a kid from a troubled home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to me, like I want other people to say, hey, like these are stories that feel that hit home and you could kind of just sit there and really enjoy it and think about it afterwards, and it means something,
Yeah, man. My goal is to make people hurt, like, and cry and feel sad and laugh all the way to the bank. Like that's why I'm here. So just read that last page of Dead End Kids and try not to feel something. Try it.
Oh, it was hard, man. It was really rough. I'll tell you that right now. I don't get too emotional with comics. I think the one comic I think I was the Hickman run on Fantastic Four with the loss where everybody thought Johnny Storm was dead. I was like, this is shitty. Like, I didn't want to read anymore. I was like, this is the worst feeling in the world. Like just watching Ben Grimm, like just depressed, and I'm just like, oh no, this is the worst feeling in the world.
I was actually thinking about that arc. It's called 3 today, and just like how wonderfully it's set up. Basically, like the 17 issues before that, it's all set up to put each of the characters in like a different, really vulnerable place. So you've got Sue Storm being the ambassador to Atlantis right as it's being attacked by that other Atlantean colony. You got Ben Grimm having his like 24 hours being human because of the serum he took. And then I forget what Reed's doing. I think he's off with the other Reeds. But like, it's so tragic watching like Johnny get killed because Ben is there enjoying himself and finally having the thing he wants, and it's the thing that stops him from saving Johnny. It's that, I mean, Hickman doesn't get a lot of credit for his like character building and stuff like that. He does a lot of plot and not a lot of character, but like that run is the gold standard for me in every way, because it's it's 100% of that through the end. I mean, the opening page of the first issue, when you see young Reed and his dad, you know, in the past, that it's really gorgeous. Is it Steve Epting? I think it was on the art. But just like, you know, the leaves are kind of ornamental. It's just such a fucking good run. It is probably my favorite comic run of all time. I don't know, but it's up there for sure.
Yeah, I got the same feeling at the end of Dead End Kids. I was like, this is
wait until you read that other that book I have coming with the 2 in the title.
Well, once that does, man, we definitely want to have you back on to chat. You know,
Sure.
We really enjoy talking to you. I enjoy talking to you and following you on Instagram or whatever. I encourage everybody else to. You're super fun to talk to, and I know you always take
I'm a lot of fun.
time out.
A lot of fun. Everyone should follow me on Instagram and Twitter and buy my books and cry and let me laugh all the way to the bank. Everyone.
Let Frank know how much you're hurting.
Yeah. Listen, man, I'm starting to run out of my own stories, so people are going to start giving me theirs. Let me know what messed you up as a kid so I can write a book about it. I'm kidding, but do it.
Oh no. So they could follow you on Twitter. And your Facebook is just Frank Gogol?
Yeah, it's I have a fan page now. Instagram made me have one so I can go live. But I don't think I've ever posted on it. But I have a Facebook account. It's just like my personal account. I think I'm the OG Frank Gogol on this, so it's Frank Gogol or Facebook/Frank Gogol. Twitter is Twitter/Frank Gogol. Instagram is Instagram/Frank Gogol. I've got kind of that market cornered on /Frank Gogol. Follow me anywhere if you're not like a Nazi crazy person. Like, shoot me a friend request if you want to hang out. If you got questions about writing, or you want to tell me how great you think my shit is, like, or if you want to tell me how bad it is. Like, honestly, I like attention, so either one's kind of. But yeah, no, I'm super open to all that. Like, I like engaging with people, and I think that it's important for the relationship to be there. So yeah, shoot me any of those things. I'm working on Twitter these days. If you're on Twitter, definitely hit me up there. I'm starting to get a little traction there. I don't really get Twitter. It's kind of a cesspool, but I think I can make it work. So if you want to help me make it work, hop over to twitter.com/Frank Gogol and is it like over there? Follow me.
Follow, yeah. My Twitter is mostly just complaining about New Jersey Transit most of the time. That's about it.
I mean, that's a whole Twitter account right there. I like my Twitter a lot these days because it's the one where I get to kind of be like unfiltered. Like, Facebook is very much me talking about work and stuff like that. Instagram is maybe an occasional picture of my dog. Most of it's promotional crap. But on Twitter, I can talk about how much I love pumpkin spice lattes. I can talk all day and night about Power Rangers. Like, you get the real me on there, and full of typos. So many typos.
It's awesome. It really is. So guys, remember, we're doing a 1,000 subscriber giveaway. We are giving away a DC Collectibles Joel Jones Wonder Woman statue and a nice bundle of books that may or may not have no heroine in it. You'll have to wait and see.
I'm gonna have one of these in it. You let me know who to send it to.
Absolutely. Look at that. It's just getting sweeter. Guys, we need to get monetized because I'm spending too much money on stuff, and honestly, I could use some financial assistance. Let's just say that.
I laugh all the way to the bank too.
Yeah,
everyone should be laughing all the way to the bank.
That's it.
Everyone.
Let's get monetized. That way we could, start helping others. Like we're really big on charities, things like that. So a lot of times we want to, be able to donate to different kind of causes and things like that, GoFundMe, Kickstarters, things like that. So, I think it's gonna be good for everybody. So, but yeah. So, I'm sorry.
What are you at right now? How many subscribers?
675. We're super close, dude. It's so close.
All right, I'll tell you what. It's August 7th. If you guys hit it by September 1st, if people step up and make it happen by September 1st, I'll hook you up with my original proof copy of the very first printed copy of Dead End Kids.
Whoa!
It's got mistakes in it, and it's what we use to proof the announcement edition. It's sitting in my closet. I'll throw that in if you guys hit 1,000 by September 1st.
You hear it here first. We're gonna clip this clip and we're gonna post it as well. Also, we're gonna be, we'll be sharing out links to anything that Frank has going on. We have the swipe up feature now, which is great. It'll take you right to the website. It'll take you to whatever link that it needs to go to. So let's get there and let's take the club to the next level. But I really appreciate you coming on, Frank. You're a good dude, and I'm happy for your success. Mac, you too. Thank you. Mac was last minute too. I'm like, hey, Mac, you want to come on the show? I need a little help. I usually like having another person to kind of bounce ideas off of. So I appreciate you coming on, Mac.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad to be here. I think I just posted on Biff Bam Pop my review of No Heroine, and then I got
11 out of 10, right?
Do an interview.
Where can they get your review, Mac?
So it's all one word, Biff Bam Pop, all one word. I have an Instagram, Uncle Mac's Reviews. You can follow me on there. That's where I post my review stuff. I make $0 doing this. I do it just because I love promoting indie comics. I love reading. I love, it's that English degree coming through that I like doing criticism. But I'm always, if I am writing about a book, I am recommending the book. I never trash books. I never drag creators. If you want to see that, there are a million YouTube pages and written reviews. All my reviews are, here's what works, here's what's great, here's why I like it, here's why you should read it. Name of my article is titled Read This Book. So if you want to read some positive reviews, and people have messaged me and told me that I'm, an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about, and they're terrible. But if you want to read some positive reviews, by all means, give it a read through. If you don't want to read positive reviews, that's what the rest of YouTube is for. So you can find so many angry people just dragging books online. You don't need to look for that. Biff Bam Pop is where I write all my reviews. So
yeah, everybody go check that out, man. Let's support each other. Let's support the awesome stuff in this community. I love reading your articles, and whenever you post them on IG as well, I really enjoy them a lot. I really like your takes on those things, for sure.
You're one of my 3 readers, so
it's 4 now. It's 4. I read them too.
Frank will read them. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming on, guys. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to catch the replay. We know the Lords were on earlier today, so we're 3 Men in the Basement. Go check those guys out, too. A lot of love to those guys. One more thing, Frank. Were you guys doing something with Cover Price?
Yeah, that just ended.
Okay.
I packed it up already, but we did a metal version of the Templesmith cover. I think it was limited to 20 to 25 copies, and I donated one to them to off or whatever. But yeah, that was cool. Those are good guys over there. I like working with them.
Sweet. All right, so that's over, guys. So too late. But
if you pre-order your books, you know about these things.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. I remember seeing it because I messaged TiVo. I'm like, oh yeah, we're having Frank on. We're gonna have a chat or whatever. He's like, oh, he's such a nice guy. I'm like, yeah, he is. So
yeah,
but yeah,
something like they have like 8,000 people on their email list or something like that, and like more than a quarter of them ended up like entering for that. That's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah, people love good free stuff. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Especially when it's on this limited exclusive like that. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you guys in the chat for staying up late with us. Frank, thank you so much, man. Really
Good.
appreciate it, bro.
Thank you for having me on.
Anytime, man. All right. For Mac and myself, we're out. Talk to you later. Peace.